to think about that question, you know, two-eyed seeing. And another way of looking at that is knowing that we have to live in two worlds, you know, and how we see ourselves on Mother Earth, Skokumakwe, how we walk upon her, how we experience her. We do it with our heart, mind, body, and spirit. The other way of seeing it is only living in our minds. And that's what dominant society has instilled in us. But even that, they had instilled in us through the educational institutions that we would never be smart enough, that we'd always be stupid, we'd never have jobs, we'd never amount to anything. That is the message for, 7 generations that the educational institutions have instilled in us from one generation to another. So seeing the world in those two ways and how dominant society's educational systems with their so-called teachers that were teaching us, it wasn't about teaching us education. It wasn't about teaching us about the world. It wasn't about us being equal to mainstream society's children at my age back then. And it still isn't, because they still see us that we're not smart enough, we're not good enough, we have no ambitions, that we're lazy, that we're still drunks, and, just go get a job. All of those negative statements and experiences that were put on me as a child, even on my own children, and how dominant society's educational system, the narrative that they painted even with our children, even to this day in the educational system. The narrative is still being taught, and it still needs to be made right, that we don't have equality. And as a Native woman, I don't have equality. And in the educational system, what they used to say to us was, as a Native girl, we'd end up being drunks, we'd live on welfare, we'll never have a job, we'll have lots of kids. And how interesting that is, that was a narrative that those teachers would put on us as young girls, not knowing what that meant back then. And they didn't care whether we learned to read and write. They didn't allow us to speak our language. They didn't allow us to play our games. They didn't even allow us to be proud of who we are. Forced us to go to the Catholic Church, forced us to go confess our sins to a white man who was sexually abusing Native boys behind the altar. Nuns who would slap us and hit us and kick us and hit us with the rulers and tell us that we're bad girls. So it made it hard as we got older to go into the higher educational system, because it was foreign. It was scary because we were surrounded by all white European settlers who portrayed that they're the ones that had the answer for us. So it has truly shifted that information, that disrespectful information, the oppression, the systemic racism, the colonized way of putting their belief system on us. Another way of looking at that, two-eye seeing, is the ethno-stress, where another culture is dominated by another culture, and we have to believe their systems and whatever it is that they do and try to make us fit in, and it doesn't fit for us. Their thinking is only, what can I get out of this? There's a beginning and there's an end. In our way of being, there is no beginning and there's no end. It's continuous. And it's a circular thinking. And white European settlers think lateral. There's a beginning and an end, good and bad, right and wrong. We don't have that thinking. Our thinking, if you make a mistake, you go figure it out and you make it right. We learn from it. And that you continue to shift and to move and to grow. And when you want to go figure something out, you go sit on Mother Earth. You go do ceremonies. You go use the medicines. You go sit with the old ones, who are not going to judge you, not going to scold you, not going to make you feel ashamed. Dominant society has always made us ashamed of who we are. And statements about, well, if you just act white, you should be all right. Just go get a job. Just go get a better education. And you need to just fit in. Well, that sounds really nice. But when you have brown skin and you're trying to fit in, It doesn't work that way. Or if you say you're from a Native community, or if you say from a Native nation, you're immediately judged, you're pushed aside, you're undermined. You're immediately, the belief is that we're stupid, that we can't run businesses, that we can't be teachers, that we can't be doctors and lawyers and all of those other parts of society. So looking through the lens of that way of being, the systems were created to exclude us, not to include us. And yet our cultural way of being is about including all human beings, all living things, because everything has a spirit. And all 4 nations of men belong to that circle. So how interesting that is, that white European settlers, as they walked through the world, they believed and created a system that their belief system is the only one and the only way. In our circular way of being, we have collective knowledge, and there's many ways of figuring things out. There's many ways of doing things, and that collective knowledge is instilled within that collective way of being and creating a better self, family, community, and nation. Aho, mi gwach yawa.